Look, I get it. You've probably never driven a car with a stick shift. The whole clutch thing is kind of alien. And when you ask Reddit or Facebook or your grumpy uncle, you're probably getting a lot of crap like, if you can't understand a clutch, you shouldn't ride a motorcycle, which is nonsense. What those crotchety old farts have probably forgotten is that not all that long ago, an automatic transmission was what only the rich folks in the neighborhood could afford. Us commoners were stuck with 3 pedals and shifting gears by hand.
You mean you have to use your hands? That's like a baby's toy.
But my, how things have changed. Today, barely more than 1% of cars sold in the US are stick shifts. And I suspect you're wondering why anything wouldn't come with an automatic transmission. Don't worry, I gotcha. My name is Dave, and I've been a professional motorcycle coach for over 25 years. I've taught literally tens of thousands of new riders how to do this. But over the last few years of coaching, I'm seeing more and more new riders really struggling with understanding the clutch. Now, I'm not here to make you feel bad about that. I'm here to help you master the clutch. Listen, to really be able to grasp this, we need to spend a few minutes explaining how a clutch works. Now, I promise understanding this first part makes the next part a lot easier, so stick with me. Now, to start off, we have the engine, the transmission, and the rear wheel. The engine is constantly spinning, and the rear wheel needs to spin at freeway speeds, neighborhood speeds, and it needs to be able to come to a complete stop. And that's where the transmission comes in. The automatic transmission on your car uses a torque converter. Think of it like 2 fans facing each other, only they're in oil instead of air. Now, if we think of this fan as the engine side of our torque converter and this fan as the wheel side of our torque converter, this side will always be under power. It's connected directly to the engine itself. But this fan is going to start spinning because the air is being pushed through it, or in the case of a torque converter, the oil is being pushed through it. However, this fan can be stopped without affecting this fan. I can stick my hand in this fan and it's not going to hurt. That's basically how your automatic transmission works. Your engine's still spinning, you can come to a stop, and as you let off the brake, the wheels start spinning again. It's pretty elegant, but it's heavy and really inefficient. We lose a lot of power in that big oil bath. And this is why your grumpy uncle calls automatic transmissions a slush box. But motorcycles are about simplicity and efficiency. The manual transmission is extremely efficient with almost no power loss. It connects the first and second fan with a clutch. A clutch on a motorcycle is made up of a dozen or so different plates with material on them very similar to brake pad material. And they are pressed and held together with a lot of pressure from springs. If we need to disengage the rotation of the rear wheel from the rotation of the engine, we squeeze the clutch and it separates those plates and allows each component to rotate independently of each other. When we need to stop or change gears, we need to unlock our engine from our transmission. And squeezing the clutch lever on our motorcycle rotates this arm, which pushes those plates apart and disconnects the engine power from the transmission and lets the rear wheel spin freely or stop rolling altogether. Motorcycles use a sequential, constant mesh transmission because of how small and light they are. Constant mesh means all the gears are linked together and turning all the other gears. Sequential means we have to move through the different gear ratios in sequence. First gear, neutral, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. We press down into first gear, past neutral, into second, into third, into fourth, into fifth, or into sixth. To get back to first, we have to go back down through all the gears in that same order, in sequence. Go back down, back to fifth, fourth, third, second, and so on. This is called the shift pattern, and all modern motorcycles, with one exception, use the same pattern. To shift up, we lift up on the lever, and to shift down, we press down. Now, I said with one exception. If you hear the term GP shift, this means everything is upside down. First gear is all the way at the top, and you press down to go into a higher gear. You'll probably not see this anytime soon, but if it comes up, now you'll know what GP shift means. And lastly, you're probably asking why neutral is halfway between first and second. Now, there's a bunch of reasons, but the most important one is it prevents us from accidentally finding ourselves in neutral. Say we're riding into a really slow corner and we don't want to downshift into neutral when we need to be in first gear. If we're coming to a quick stop, we can just keep clicking down with our foot and know that no matter how many times we click down, we'll end up in first gear. But more on that in a minute. So now back to the clutch, the reason why you are here. What we need to remember is that because we're dealing with a constant mesh transmission, every time we change gears, every time we need to squeeze that clutch, which separates the engine from the transmission and allows the rear wheel to spin independently. Inside the constant mesh, it relieves that pressure between those gears and allows them to slide over and engage with the next gear. When we try to move the shift lever without squeezing the clutch, we're literally banging and smashing and grinding those gears together to try to get them to engage, which literally damages your transmission. I am really excited to announce that we're now working with Insta360. 360 cameras have become an incredibly important part about how we make content. It just gives us so much flexibility over angles. We can put the camera in unique places and really illustrate what we're talking about. So if you are looking for an action camera, 360 or traditional, to document this amazing journey that you're embarking upon, please give Insta a look-see. In fact, they're giving all Canyon Chasers a nice little discount with this coupon code. I'll also put a link down in the description. We're gonna start the bike in neutral. And remember, neutral is a half click between first and second. All right? And I'm gonna squeeze the clutch and click it down into first gear. Now what we want to try to do is we want to get the bike rolling without using any throttle. We're just going to ease the clutch out really slowly, smooth linear movements, get the bike rolling with no throttle. It's going to take a slow hand, and that's exactly what we want, and it's why we practice it like this. We also want to practice squeezing the clutch and squeezing the front brake to come to a nice smooth stop. When we forget to squeeze the clutch in when we stop, the engine will die, because when the clutch lever is out, the rotation of the rear wheel and the rotation of the engine are locked together. Once we're rolling, it's time to practice upshifting. We're going to roll off the throttle, squeeze the clutch, lift the shift lever, ease the clutch back out, roll back on the throttle. Let's do that again. Roll, squeeze, lift, ease, roll. Same thing with downshifting, but we have to be even more careful with how we release the clutch to allow the rotation of the wheels to catch up with the rotation of the engine. So roll, squeeze, press, ease. See how smooth that was? That's what we want. Nice, smooth, slow hands. All right, down back into first gear. Roll, squeeze, press, ease. Nice and smooth. Cool? So is it bad to upshift and downshift without the clutch? Now, for sure, there are ways to shift without the clutch. One way is called clutchless shifting or blip shifting. Some bikes may have a quick shifter that allows us to shift without the clutch, but those only work in very specific situations. So we're not going to worry about those right now. Another option is Honda's amazing new e-clutch system, which in short allows you to shift a traditional constant mesh sequential manual transmission without having to worry about the clutch so much. So if you're shopping for a motorcycle and the clutch is really overwhelming to you, seriously consider the Honda e-clutch. Honda recently flew me to Atlanta where I got to test the e-clutch system, and it's fantastic. I'll link to that video in the corner, down in the description, and at the end of the video. But in short, for the vast majority of us and for the vast majority of motorcycles, yes, shifting the motorcycle without the clutch is bad and will damage your transmission. We want to get in the habit of squeezing the clutch every single time we move that shift lever. If you forget and you bang a downshift and grind those gears together, I want you to imagine sticking your finger into a running fan. it should hurt your soul. All right, great, we're good to go, right? But as we head out to do some real world riding, it begs the question, when exactly do we upshift and when exactly do we downshift? Now, you may have heard the phrase, we want to match engine speed with road speed. Well, what exactly does that mean? Your speedometer and your tachometer are going to become your best buddies. If your bike has a gear indicator, even better. But if not, that's fine too. Because if you follow this simple process, with some practice, you're going to develop a really great feel for which gear you should be in, and you'll never really worry about being in the wrong gear again. So how do we know what gear we're supposed to be in? All right, once we get to around 2,000 RPMs, we can upshift into second gear. As we get up to 3,000 RPMs, roll, squeeze, lift, ease, roll into third gear. As we get up to 4,000 RPMs, roll, squeeze, lift, ease, roll into fourth gear. And then finally, 5,000 RPM, roll, squeeze, lift, ease, roll. Now for the next part, because we're not always going to be accelerating up to freeway speeds. All right, so let's say I'm going about 20 miles an hour. What gear do you suppose I should be in? Don't overthink it. But yeah, you're right. I should probably be in second gear. And if I'm going about 30 miles an hour, what gear do you suppose I should be in? That's right. We should be down into third gear. It's really that simple. See, I knew you wouldn't have a problem with this. So let's say you don't have a handy-dandy gear indicator, and I'm traveling at 30 miles an hour. My RPMs are way below 3,000 RPMs. What should I do? That's right, I should downshift until those numbers start to match. See, still, they're not close. Let's go down again. Look at that. It all kind of lines up. Matching engine speed to road speed. Listen, this is not by any means absolute. These numbers are all just basic guidelines. There's going to be variations from motorcycle to motorcycle, and as your riding progresses, you're going to find yourself deviating from this all the time. But this is a great starting point to help us understand how everything works together, and it's what people mean when they say match engine speed with road speed. But now it's time for us to practice coming to a stop. The objective here is by the time we come to a stop, the bike needs to be in first gear and the clutch needs to be squeezed. All right, so I'm in sixth gear going about 60 miles an hour, and I want to come to a nice smooth stop. I'm going to roll off the throttle to the front brake, squeeze the clutch, and as I get to those speeds, I'm going to click down, so that by the time I get to first gear, I come to a nice, smooth, controlled stop. Do you want to see that again? I'm going to roll off the throttle to the front brake, squeeze the clutch, and as my speed drops, I'm going to click down through the gears. So by the time I come to a nice, smooth stop, I am in first gear. And if I have to get rolling again, I can just ease the clutch out and away I go. It's really that simple. If we come to a stop with the clutch squeezed in, but we've forgotten to downshift back into first, because motorcycle engines are that constant mesh sequential transmission, they are designed to shift, and they shift better when the rear wheel is moving. And that's why it's really important to match engine speed with road speed and downshift through the gears as we come to a stop so that we're in first gear by the time we are done rolling. Now, what's going to happen if I forget and just let go of the clutch? The bike is going to stall because the clutch locks the rotation of the engine and the rotation of the rear wheel together. That's why it's super important to always squeeze the clutch when we come to a stop. And there's another, probably even more important reason to downshift as we come to a stop. Let's say I'm riding up to a red light, but as I almost get there, it turns green. If I'm not downshifting through the gears and I'm still in sixth gear while still maybe going 20 miles an hour, what's going to happen when I try to accelerate away? I'm not going to have any power. The ratios are going to be all wrong, and I'm going to run the risk of stalling the engine, which is hard on the transmission, but more importantly, it puts us at risk if there happens to be another car behind us. So when stopping, should we release the clutch between every downshift? Well, we can, and there's certainly situations where that's totally appropriate. But for now, where you're new and figuring this all out, you already have a lot on your plate. Just leave that clutch squeezed in and click down through the gears as you come to a stop. It's more important right now to focus on being in first gear with the clutch squeezed every time we roll to a stop. Now, the other question I've been getting a lot the last 2 years is, should you squeeze the clutch and coast through a corner? Well, in most situations, no, that's a bad idea. We want to leave the clutch out and have some engine power going to the rear wheel through the corner. We don't want to be in a coast state while we're trying to make it around a bend. So leave the clutch out in the corners. Now, all of this is going to take some practice to get really good at, but try not to be too anxious. Over your lifetime, you are going to be shifting literally millions of times. Eventually, it'll become automatic. But in the meantime, find an empty parking lot or an empty road and just practice starting off, shifting through all the gears, then shifting back down to first as you stop. And if the clutch really is overwhelming, really look at the Honda e-clutch system. It allows you to not use the clutch if you don't want, or practice getting really good with the clutch if you do. So I want to thank Insta360. I used my Insta360 X4 to make a good portion of this video. And you can use coupon code INR5D9M for being a Canyon Chaser. I'm going to put the link down in the description. I also want to thank our channel members and subscribers for helping keep this channel going. I've never wanted to put any of this content behind a paywall, and they help make it possible. And before I forget, you can hang out with us on Discord, and I'm going to try to get our subreddit going again. Thanks so much for watching. Ride on and ride well.